Thou hast no right but to do thy will. Do that, and no other shall say nay.
Welcome to the Dark Ascent podcast, where we illuminate the path to discovering your true will. This is episode 22, Becoming the Prime Mover of Your Life. To learn more about our work, please visit darkascent.org. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Hi everyone, welcome to our podcast. I am Malik Toth, and I am here with my wife, Eleonora.
Hi!
And today might be a tad bit spooky with the effects because it's thundering intermittently and it's raining outside. So if you hear that, then it'll just add to our ambience, I suppose. But today we are talking about something that you might not grasp from the title alone, but basically becoming the first actor or the prime mover in your reality or in your life. I sent out an email the other day about this topic, being the actor instead of the reactor, and I said something in that email, just kind of an accidental turn of phrase, but I kind of liked how I said it about, you have to be the prime mover in your life, and so I thought it'd be an interesting topic to discuss here on the podcast. So what I find is that a lot of people, almost everyone, pretty much everyone, reacts to life. You have things that happen, you have positive or negative situations that come up, or you have positive or negative thoughts that come up, and you react to them. You take them seriously. And this ties really well with our episode 20, was it, about moving beyond the veil?
Yes.
Where we talked about moving beyond your thoughts and how that's an illusion and all that kind of stuff. But we react to our thoughts, we react to our emotions, we react to life, to what people tell us, to what experiences we have, to even feared possibilities in the future or things like that. And we're just in this constant state of reaction where, we aren't really responsible, or we don't think so, it doesn't seem like it, for our own emotions, because they're always just, we're responding, we're reacting to whatever comes up. So, you think if you have a bad day, it's not your fault, it's the fault of your boss, or of your coworkers, or of your spouse, or that could be true.
Hey. I thought you were going to throw something there.
But you think it's someone else's fault, or just the universe in general, just bad things happen. But the fact of the matter is that you are reacting to what life is throwing your way. And the reason that is a problem is, first of all, because you're not being intentional. You're not being deliberate about your emotions. You're at the whim of life, basically. And when you're at the whim of life, you're going to lose out. You're going to suffer because things aren't going to go the way that you would like them to go. But secondly, because when you are reacting, you are giving up control over your reality. Because as the law of attraction would state, or magic in general, reality is a reflection of your own inner state, your own emotions, your own thoughts, your own subconscious, and so on. So when you are reacting to life, when you're allowing your inner state, your emotions to respond to what life is bringing up, then you are giving away creative control to something or someone else. And so let's say something bad happens. Okay, so you know how it is. You wake up and you start having a bad day. Something bad happens. You either have a negative thought, or something bad happens early in the morning, and it just sort of sets the tone for the day. And then the day keeps going downhill and downhill and downhill, and pretty soon you're wishing that you could just start over.
Yep.
Right? We've all had days like that. That is because early on you responded negatively to something, and your negative response went out there and attracted something else negative, which made you respond negative. And that negative response went out and attracted something else negative, and so on and so on and so on and so on and so on. And it's just this whole vicious cycle that it's really hard to get out of.
Well, and I think there are people too, because I know of people that their day will start that way, like where it's just really horrible. And then something great will happen.
Yeah,
to turn it around. And
yeah.
It does happen, but I think it depends on what state you're in.
And usually that's the case if you can separate yourself from it enough. It's a really hard thing.
Yeah.
And the more negative it gets, the more negative you feel, and the more negative you feel, the more negative it gets. So it's just sort of a really huge vicious cycle, and sort of a catch-22, because it's like you have to start feeling positive in order to start having positive experiences, but when negative things keep happening, you're just going to keep feeling negative. So this is, you're giving away control. You're not the predominant creative force anymore in your reality. Something else is. Either another person, could, again, your boss, your coworkers, your spouse, your friends, your children, your parents, whatever, or something else is. An event, an experience, a potential future that's not even realized yet. Something else is in control, not you. And that just goes against everything that we're trying to do here. So we're trying to be creators, right? And that's where a lot of people get into victim mentality a lot, because they get so used to responding to life that they think that's all that there is. Well, I wouldn't suffer if blah, blah, blah. If this hadn't happened to me, or if that wouldn't happen, or if this person would be nicer, or if that person would just accept me, or it goes on and on and on and on and on. And those things might be true, although not really, because it's always going to be something, right? If one person becomes nice, starts, treating you nicely, it'll be someone else that you're complaining about. And if every single person treated you nicely, which will never happen, if every single person loves you and treats you well, you'll still find something. There'll be some event, some experience that isn't going your way. You're just never going to have a time in your life where every person is awesome, every experience is awesome, every single thing in your life is 100% wonderful.
It kind of reminds me of the metaphor of the rose, because roses are, a very beautiful thing. Then you have the thorns.
Right, yeah.
Now you can either ignore the thorns, or you can accept them.
Right.
And life is not supposed to be absolutely 100% amazing.
No.
We have to know how to deal with when it isn't amazing.
Right.
The thorns.
Yep. So you can't expect everyone to make life wonderful for you. It's just not going to happen. And it's nice. It's nice when they do, when some people do that, but it's not up to them. And the fact of the matter is, the control rests with you. Now, the thing is, the control is not in you demanding, you have to treat me nicely so I can feel better, so I can have a happy life. That's not, or, hey, bill collectors, you can't request money from me because when you do, it makes me feel bad. And you can't do that. That's not what kind of control you have. In the physical material world, you have actually very little control, because the physical material world is really just an effect of something greater, and that something greater is your own inner state, what you have going on in your mind and your emotions and your subconscious. And that is where you do have control. And so you can't look to someone else and say, you have to behave a certain way for me to be happy. And we do this all the time. I mean, that's,
Oh, yeah.
do it all the time. But you can't do that, because sometimes they might, and that's awesome, and sometimes, a lot of times, they won't. So it's up to us to take control by breaking that cycle. And the only way to break that cycle is to stop reacting. Right? Again, it's easy to say, if you stop doing things that I don't like, then I'll stop suffering. But you have to stop suffering even if they keep doing things you don't like. And that's one of the hardest things in this kind of work. One of the hardest things. Because, it makes sense that if someone does something we don't like, that we get upset. I mean, everyone does it. It makes sense. It's what we were taught. It's, our parents did that to us. They said, oh, behave nicely or be good so they can be happy, Yeah. If they had a long day, then they want us to be quiet so that they aren't bothered, or, you have things like that happening when you were a kid. So our parents taught it to us, and society teaches it to us. It's everywhere, but it's powerless. So the first thing you have to do is you have to break this cycle. You have to break this connection between what other people do or what life does and how you feel about it. So the ultimate goal here is, as the title says, to become the prime mover of your reality. So let me talk about that for a second to see, what does that mean exactly? What does it mean to be the prime mover of your reality? Basically, it means that you are the one acting and life is the one responding to what you put out there. Life is the one conforming to your will. It's magic. It's a magical act.
Yeah.
You are the one, I don't want to say exerting your will, because that sounds like a lot of effort, but you're the one putting forth your will, and life responds in kind. So essentially, you are the one setting the tone for your life. You're setting the mood. You are creating things how you want them to be, but you're doing so in a place of power, not in a place of powerlessness. Like, if I just control enough people, then I can be happy. That doesn't work. It's, let me control my own emotions and my own thoughts, and then I can be happy, and then things will respond to my happy state. So we sort of have to flip things around a little bit, that instead of, what can I do to get things to make me happy? That's the old way of seeing it that doesn't work. That's the powerless way of seeing it. The powerful way of seeing it, the empowered way of seeing it, where you are the prime mover, is, I decide I'm going to be happy, and then what will happen to validate, to confirm that decision? Do you see the difference? It's a very subtle thing, sort of, but you're not, people always come to me, I need this thing to be happy, I want this thing to happen so I'm happy. Well, sorry, that's not going to happen. There's the thunder I was waiting for. I don't know if it's audible. Perfect moment, too.
I know.
But you have to set the tone by deciding, I'm going to be happy, I'm going to feel abundant, I'm going to feel loved, I'm going to feel whatever I want to feel. I decide this is what my life is going to be like internally. My inner felt experience of my reality is going to be such. And you decide. And you ignore everything to the contrary. Now, by ignore, I don't mean you pretend it doesn't exist. What I mean is that you don't react to it, which I'll get back to in a second. But you decide, this is my experience. And then a magical, wonderful thing happens. Life agrees. Life says, oh, you're going to be happy? Okay, here's a happy experience. Here's a happy experience. Here's a happy experience. Oh, you're going to feel abundant? Okay, here's an abundant experience. Here's an abundant experience. Here's an abundant experience. Or you're going to feel love. Okay, here's some love and some love and some love and some love. And it agrees with you. But you have set the tone. You have set the pace, not responding to what life does. And you're always setting the pace. You just don't realize it. So what we usually do is we usually have some sort of kind of under the surface or very background feeling of angst or of dissatisfaction or whatever negative emotions going on. And life agrees with that. And it says, oh, okay, you want some anxiety or some upset or aggravation or frustration. Well, here's someone annoying you. You say, oh, that person's annoying me. Oh, I'm feeling annoyance. Oh, you have annoyance? Okay, I agree. Here's some more annoyance for you. Like, it's just agreeing with whatever whatever you're doing, but you're seeing that and you think you're on the receiving end.
Yep.
And life just keeps agreeing and agreeing and agreeing and agreeing and agreeing. And it just keeps giving you more of whatever you're focusing on.
And it's very interesting because, I know people that were in extreme physical pain or something like that, where they could have been really bitter. And there's one particular person I'm thinking of who is now deceased, but I knew her when I was in high school. And she was in her late 90s at the time. Mm-hmm. And she was 100 when she died, but when she turned 96, she had a problem with her hip where it disintegrated. And she couldn't have any kind of operation. because she was too old, pretty much. Before that, she was walking all over town. Now, she could have taken that experience and became bitter and all this stuff, but actually, she turned it around, and her physical body didn't really get better, but she was one of the best people I ever met in my life. Yeah. And she had such a blessed and a great 4 years, 4 or 5 years on Earth, where she was so happy. And she had her days, but she never showed it, ever.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it was just one of those things where, when you get old, stuff happens.
Yeah.
Just the way it is. But everyone loved her.
Yeah.
And she was able to help so many people. But I think she was, in turn, helped or blessed as well, because it was one of those things.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying, you could be in a really bad circumstance. So it's not life that does it. It was her choice.
Yep. Yeah, she decided to be happy.
Yeah.
And that's what she was.
She was like, this isn't going to do anything. This isn't going to bother me.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not saying she didn't have her days where she was hurting, but she didn't take it out on anybody either.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it probably kind of softened the blow of the physical condition. Not that it got better, but maybe it wasn't as bad as it would have been if she was all miserable and upset. And
yeah, and I don't really think you would have never known she was hurting. Now, obviously, I can't see facial expression, but I can hear it in their voice. Usually,
yeah.
You just couldn't hear it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's your choice. You have to set the tone. And this is being the prime mover is you're going to be, there was a book I read a couple years ago. What was it called? It was about structural tension by Robert Fritz. And he used the phrase in that book about being the predominant creative force in your life. And I always loved that phrase. But this is the same thing, being the prime mover. You are the one that is deciding. You are the mover. You are the first mover. And the reason I use this term, I told Eleanor beforehand, it's a tiny bit blasphemous, which is even better. Because this is a term that, theologians have been using for centuries. I was a theology major in college for a while. No, was I a major? I don't know what I was.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah, I was a
Philosophy
and theology major for a while. And so, I studied Thomas Aquinas and all these different theologians and philosophers, and they talked about, God is the prime mover.
Didn't that one always bother you? Was that the statement that always bothers you? And you tried to ask me, and I was like,
I don't remember. I don't know.
It was one of the proofs that
one of the 5 ways, yeah. I don't remember.
I thought that was it, but I don't know. I could be wrong.
But, the first cause, the prime mover, the unmoved mover, I think is another name for him. But all these different names for God, and because God is, supposed to be the thing that started the whole cycle, that started the whole chain. But when we're looking at our lives, what if we could be the prime mover, the first cause, the unmoved mover of our lives? Because we don't have to react. We have a choice. Sure, there are things that move us, that cause us to do certain things, but we don't have to respond to those. It's like, yeah, there are causes, there are influences, but we don't have to listen to them. It's about choice. So if you choose to be the prime mover, not the thing that's moved, which means the thing that's influenced or the thing that's affected by other things. If you decide to be the prime mover, now you're God of your life. That's the whole goal here, right? Is becoming the God of your reality, becoming the creative force in your universe, becoming the central star of your solar system. So that should be your title. It should be all of our titles. Prime mover, because that's what you can be. So that's kind of where I got this phrase from, but I think it's so apt because that is what we should be aiming for. But when you can set the tone, when you can decide this is the experience I'm going to have, and then have it, because it is your choice. Emotions are subjective. They are something that you can control. I got my certification in neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, and one of the things they told us from the start was when you're working with a client, get their goal. What's their goal? And their goal can never be a state. Your goal can't be happiness. Your goal can't be joy or peace or anything like that. Those are states. There was I'm in a law of attraction group on Facebook, and someone the other day, I don't remember how exactly they said it, but they were saying how they're trying to manifest happiness. I said, you can't manifest happiness. Just
be happy.
Be happy. Choose the state of happiness. It's a state. You can't manifest a state. Right? So
it's just funny to me.
I know, but that's the kind of things people try to do. But a goal can't be a state. You can't say, I'm going to try to achieve happiness. No. Happiness. There's a quote from Abraham, and I know I have a lot of problems with him, but I love this quote, is something that I'm paraphrasing. A happy life is just a string of happy moments.
That's true.
And I like that. It's so simple. Like, how do I be happy? Just right now. What's blocking you from being happy? Right? It's just thoughts, just fears that are not even real most of the time. You know, when you're in the present moment, I used to always say this, when you're in the present moment, there are no problems. Because in the present moment, your work doesn't exist, your problematic boss or coworkers or whoever doesn't exist. Nothing's here right now in the present moment. Money problems don't exist, bills don't exist. Nothing exists right here in the present moment. Happiness is an innate property of the present moment. And that's why a lot of spiritual teachers focus so much on just being in the present. I don't think you always have to be exclusively in the present. It's fun to dream about the future. But if you're thinking about the future in a negative sense, then just bringing your mind back to the present moment is a really nice way of just finding some peace. All suffering exists either in the past or the future, which is illusion, right? So you cannot have a state as a goal. And so happiness or abundance, as far as a feeling of abundance, of richness, or love, or any of those things, those are in your control. You can create those. It's really easy to do so. It doesn't seem like it sometimes because our thoughts get in the way so much, but it really is very easy to do so. So your own felt experience is 100% in your control. If you don't think so, you're playing the victim. And when you can decide what your felt experience is going to be, and then you do it, now you're the prime mover. Not only do you do it, but you keep it up. You maintain it in the face of resistance, which I'll go there in a second. But when you can do that, you're the prime mover. And again, life agrees with you. And life is always agreeing with you. Whatever you're putting out there, life says, okay, here's more of that. Okay, here's more of that. You know, and that's why you get half the things you get, or not even half, all the things you get really, because you're responding and life is bringing you more of how you respond. But when you can just say, this is what I choose to feel and experience, then life says, okay, here's an experience that confirms and validates what you've chosen. It's so simple. Last year, I had a job that I was desperately trying to get out of last summer. And, you know, I dreaded going to work. Well, not going, I work remotely, so. But signing on to work, I guess. My boss was he was a micromanager.
Huh.
And just, things weren't going so well. But I started deciding, I said, you know what? I choose that today I'm going to feel happy. I'm going to feel more specific things like accomplished. I'm going to feel competent. I'm going to feel like I'm doing a good job. I'm going to feel valued. And then I would feel those things. And you know what happened? Without exception, something would happen at work that would validate my choice. Abraham calls this setting a grid. They haven't called it that for years, but I always loved that phrase for it. Setting the grid. Like you have a grid is like a foundation you build upon, right? And so you set like a happiness grid or whatever kind of grid. It's an emotion. And then life fills it in with more specific experiences. But I kind of like setting the tone, you know, for how your experience is going to be. And so I would choose these things. I would choose, I'm going to feel happy. I'm going to feel valued. I'm going to feel accomplished and competent. And things would happen to validate that. And I do that still sometimes now, like with my current job. Sometimes if I feel like I'm not getting a lot of positive feedback, I will, and this sounds so like prideful, or like I'm looking for, I don't know, positive comments or something, but sometimes it's helpful. But I will in the morning, let's say, just choose, I'm going to feel like I'm doing a really good job. And again, without exception, I remember I did this a couple weeks ago. I just felt kind of low about things, and I said, you know what? I'm going to feel valued. I'm going to feel like I'm a really good employee and a really good worker. And so I did that. And later on that day, there was a difficult task, and I had a few decisions, or had a few choices about how I could go about it, and I chose one that was a little bit different. And later on in the day, the person I was working with said, hey, that was a really great approach on that task. And just that little comment felt really nice. You know, it seems like a really small little thing, but that's how we build up the kind of life we want, with these tiny little experiences like this. Even this week, earlier this week, even still, I decided, you know what, I want to feel like there is plenty of abundance. You know, I could use some more. And then I got a new client, and my mother covered the cost for something, which she never does, that she was buying for me on my behalf. She's like, oh, it wasn't much, so I just covered it. Like, that's literally, how often has she said that since we've moved here?
Not once.
Never.
She maybe got my coffee once.
Yeah, when we're with her. But yeah, she never says, oh, I covered it for you. Right? Because she doesn't make much herself, so I don't blame her, but it's just not something she does. So it's so simple. People think manifestation is so hard, and it's so simple when you know what to do. You just have to decide what your experience is going to be, and then do it. Have the experience, and then life agrees. Every time, life agrees with whatever you put out there. It's amazing when you really start experiencing it firsthand. So that is what it means to be the prime mover. It's just that you are setting the tone. You are deciding what you're going to experience. Now, there are a few obstacles here. Two, namely, but there may be more I think of. The first thing, as I said in the beginning, is that you have to disconnect the experience, or the thing itself, the physical happening, from the emotional response. You have to disconnect them, because as long as those two things are connected, you're just going to create more of the same, right? And this is why people can go for years without really changing, because, you know, without, let's say, their financial situation changing, or without their relationship situation changing, because they're just doing the same that they've always done. They're doing the same, and they're getting the same, and they're responding the same, and so they're doing the same, and they're getting the same, and they're responding the same, right? It's just a never-ending cycle until you decide to break the cycle. The thing is, life will never decide to break the cycle, because it can't. It's going to agree with whatever you put out there. Sometimes we'll get a break where a random positive thing happens, either because, you know, we were feeling especially good that day or something, or, you know, sometimes something just happens and it's a lucky break. You know, it could be a blessing from a deity, or from a being if you work with them, or, you know, something like that. That can happen. I've discussed before, I don't think on this podcast, but in the past, I've discussed how, you know, gods or spirits or beings can sort of go outside of this whole cycle for you, you know, and that can't happen. They can't totally go against your vibration, but they can sort of nudge it in a certain direction. They can give you sort of a lucky break, and then it's up to you to respond to it. It's like a lifeline someone throws, and then you can either take it or not. If you take it, then you have your path to better experiences. If you don't take it, then you're just going to sink. But that can happen. That can happen. But most of the time, life is not going to break the cycle. Most of the time, it's up to you to break the cycle, and you shouldn't go looking for someone else to break the cycle for you. It can happen if you're lucky, but you shouldn't look for it. So, you know, you have to be the one to break it. And so you have to find a way to disconnect the event, the happening, from the response, the cause from the effect. The emotional response is really where all the power is. And so you have to find a way to disconnect those. And I've talked about, you know, episode 20, again, moving beyond the veil, is a really great one for doing that, because it's moving beyond all the thoughts, and it's the thoughts that are responding to everything. when you move beyond the thoughts is that place of stillness, of awareness, of emptiness that is always the first mover. So it's actually pretty big, because when you're in your thoughts, when you are in your emotions and your thoughts and everything on the surface, you are an effect of whatever is happening in your reality, right? You're in that place of stimulation and response, or stimulus and response. But if you can move beyond the surface waves, let's say of the ocean, if you can move beyond that, move beyond the veil to that place of stillness and awareness and peace, that is unaffected by everything. That is never affected. And when you can do that, that place within you is always the prime mover. Always. Because it's always unaffected. It's just a matter of if you are paying attention to it or not. But that is always unaffected by anything. You could have the worst, most traumatic thing happen in life, and that place within you is still totally unaffected. Because all emotions are on the surface of that. And so if you can get to that place, if you can move beyond the veil, then you can be that prime mover and totally unaffected. So that's really good for disconnecting it. But you have to find a way to disconnect that event from the emotional response to it. And, the best way to do that, I've talked about acceptance. Acceptance is really... I had a client yesterday, and he was telling me about his resistance, about his beliefs that he had. And he said, I just don't know how to get rid of them. And I said, well, here's the problem. I said, you're believing in them, and you're resisting them. And I said, do you notice how you're pushing them away? And he said, yeah. And I asked him, can you just, for a second, for a moment, stop resisting them? Can you accept them? Can you let them be? And he did. He said, yeah, they're better. Just like that, in literally 5 seconds. That was it. And his thoughts no longer had control over him. So acceptance, to me, is always the first method, because it's really, we resist so much, because we fear our thoughts and we fear everything. And so we resist it. When we resist it, we give it more power, we give it more credence. But just saying, yeah, I accept it, it's okay, saying yes to it instead of saying no to it, is a really powerful way of very quickly disconnecting your emotional response. Because it's really hard to feel upset or any kind of negative emotion when you're accepting something that doesn't really go together. So that is my first method. That and mindfulness, which is really the same thing, just observing it and just finding a way to get to that place which is beyond all thoughts and all emotions. So if you can disconnect that, if you can have someone or something do something that you don't like, and then you'll have the emotion right away. It's like a cause and effect or stimulus response. Like I said, you'll have the emotion right away. But having the emotion isn't a bad thing. It's like if someone insults you, you're probably going to be a little upset. Or if something bad happens, you're probably going to be a little negative about it at first. A little fearful or a little anxious or whatever. That's going to happen. That's just life.
Yeah, you got mad at me just the other day.
Yes, thank you. I don't remember about what now. But...
I'm just saying.
Yeah, it happens. But the thing is, what do you do about it? Do you dig into it and identify with it and believe in it and go really deep into it and make that your reality? Or do you accept it and be mindful of it and notice that it's not you? You're not it. It's just an emotion.
Yeah, and you really didn't let it affect you all that much, I don't think.
It's just an emotion.
Yeah.
And if you can sort of separate from it a little bit, then things start to change. You don't give it power anymore. It seeks power by making you believe in it, by making you think it's real, whether it's a thought or an emotion or whatever. But if you can just accept it and be mindful of it and breathe through it and just make an open space for it, then it'll go. And it no longer has power. And so it won't create for you. So just having a negative emotion isn't enough to cause all these negative things to happen. People are so afraid of negative emotions. And that's not what I want you to do, because being afraid of something is just going to create more of it. If you're looking out for negative emotions so you can, quash them, it doesn't work. But, you're just going to create more of them. But if you can accept anything that comes up and just be okay with it, then they'll go away very quickly. And then they don't have any power. And what's left is that place of peace and awareness and silence, which is the first mover. And then you have a blank canvas to create whatever you want, to create the experience within yourself that you would rather have. So this takes practice, but this is the first step. You need to disconnect those two things. You need to not give power to your negative emotions. It's okay if they happen. They will happen. Even the most enlightened masters in the world have negative emotions. I remember some years ago I was listening to a book by Adyashanti, who's a spiritual teacher, if you're not familiar with him. And he was talking about how, sometimes he gets kind of frustrated at his computer. But it's just for a second, and then he kind of sees through it, and he's like, oh yeah, it's just, it's not real.
Yeah.
And it's done. Emotions are very sticky, I like to say. They stick to us if we believe in them. But if you don't believe in them, they sort of just fall away.
I think my dad is like that, and maybe that's why he's so scary. Because emotions will go through him, he'll blow up for a minute, and then he's done.
Yeah.
And it throws me off, because I'm like, wait, you were just mad 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. Yeah, my mother does that too sometimes.
Yeah, and it's like, wow. Like, with me, I could be upset for 2 hours about something.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I'm not saying that what he's doing is healthy necessarily, but it's just interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Emotions can be very sticky, and it's hard to separate yourself from them. But acceptance and mindfulness can really help there. So that's the first step. Again, just disconnecting the cause and the effect, the stimulus and the response. Again, when you are on the surface, in the place of thoughts and emotions, you're always going to be affected. You're always going to be having that stimulus response connection, okay? But if you can spend more time beyond that, in the space of awareness, of stillness, then you'll be affected much less. Possibly not at all if you're there entirely. Now, emotions might flicker on the surface, but they don't stick around because, number one, you don't believe in them. Number two, you don't attach or identify with them. It's just here and then it goes. It's like a cloud in the sky. It's here for a few minutes and then it goes. Just like this storm that was here, and I think it's passing now because I hear birds chirping again.
Yeah, and it's brighter outside too.
So, we had this thunderstorm that was here for a little while. And it left. And there's no damage. There's no, it didn't have any effects. I mean, there's rain on the ground and stuff like that. But I mean, the sky is no different for having had a thunderstorm in it. And that's how your self is. It's no different even if you had crushing depression just a few moments ago. Your true inner self is no different for having had that experience. Because it's beyond all of that. It's sort of like you have a dream, and you wake up from the dream, and the dream sort of disappears. It's not so real anymore. Even if it was the worst dream you ever had, after a little while, it's sort of muted, right? And that's how our emotions can be. And that's how it is to our true self. So you want to disconnect that. The thing that can happen, the other thing I want to mention is that when you are doing this, your mind can fight back a little bit. And it's not like an intentional thing, like, no, I don't want you to do this, so I'm going to fight back. Life will always agree to what you're putting out there. But you have certain subconscious patterns and habits and ways of doing things and so on and so forth that when you start to change, it doesn't like so much. So, you can think, oh yeah, I'll just stop responding to that person or to this event or whatever. And you can have the best of intentions, and then you try it and it's not successful, or something even worse might happen. You ever have the experience, you try to not react to something, you try to have a different response to something, and then something even worse happens.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's your mind sort of fighting back a little bit. Let's say you're used to feeling lack, for example. you're used to feeling lack, and you set an intention, I'm going to feel more abundance. Now, feeling more abundance doesn't mean I'm going to have more money right away, and preferably you don't do it for that reason. Now, I know people will, but you don't try to manipulate reality. Like, well, if I feel this, then I'll get that. So, because if I get that, then I'll feel more of this. It doesn't really work. That's sort of a warped way of going about it. Like, if I feel abundant, then I'll get more money so I can feel more abundant. It's just sort of a lacking way of going about it. It really doesn't work. But if you just say, I really like to feel abundance, let's say. And usually I feel lack and it doesn't feel very nice. So I'm just going to decide I'm going to feel abundance. And so you start doing that. You start, noticing when you feel lack, and you start disconnecting from that, as we discussed. And then you set the tone by deciding to feel something different, and you feel that feeling. And that's great. But your mind doesn't like the change so much because it's used to feeling one way. And if you're trying to feel something else, it's sort of feeling a little threatened. So you may have more fears come up than usual. Well, that's great. Your new positive focus is awesome. But what if that happens? And you'll have fears that come up that you didn't even know existed, or maybe that haven't even come up for years or for a very long time. Like, where did that fear come from? Like, that's just random. Your mind is going to throw everything it has at you to get you to change your decision. And negative things in the world might even happen. It's not uncommon that someone sets a new intention to feel abundant, and then they get a huge bill in the mail, or some charge comes out that they weren't expecting, and now they're really, lacking in the bank. And, oh, now what? Look what that did for me. It's just a little bit of growing pains. It's just your mind fighting back a little bit. And that's all it is. And if you let go of your decision now, basically you've admitted defeat. It's won. Your mind has won, and it's keeping its old programming, and it says, yeah, I told you, lack is the way of things. And it goes back to how it was. And people do this all the time.
Oh, yeah.
I was feeling good about it, and that happened. Now I feel awful. Well, now you've just admitted to your mind that it was right. It doesn't work like that. So if those things happen, you have to maintain your decision.
I would say it's a sign that things are moving the right way.
Yeah, I would rather, and I've told people before, I know someone, and she may listen to this, I don't know. I've told someone in the past, I would rather you feel horrible resistance than come to me and say that you feel nothing. Because if you feel nothing, that means that no energy is moving, or barely. Energy is moving super slowly. Because she was saying and I said, I just want to kick up something. I just want to, if you came to me and said, I'm so depressed, I would cheer because I'd be happy energy was moving. Like, I would rather that than, yeah, everything's okay. To be bored, because boredom means no movement.
It's like same shit, different day.
Exactly. Thank you for that translation.
Well, it is.
I know.
And people that live like that, I don't know how they do it.
Right. So, I would rather trigger you. I've done this to clients. I had a client a couple of years ago.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Who just was so persistent. Now, the thing is, I'm saying to be persistent in your positive focus, but she did it in a way that I could tell was disingenuous. She would totally ignore her true emotions on the matter. Just, everything is wonderful and I know it's coming. And the way you know it's not real is because nothing's happened, right? One thing Abraham says is there are two ways to know what your vibration is. Number one is by your emotions, and number two, if you ignore those, is by what's happening in your life. If you're saying life is wonderful and money is coming and everything's great and I'm abundant, and you don't have enough money to pay for food, or you don't have any more money than ever before, and you've been doing this for 6 months, you're lying to yourself. So I tried to trigger her. I said, you know what? What if it never comes?
Oh!
And she said, that would be kind of upsetting. And so I triggered her, and then we worked through it.
And then there was someone, this is who I thought you were talking about. This person that yelled, I don't know what you did, but she screamed.
Oh, that terrified me. I don't like yelling. Yeah.
But whatever you did, it broke her so much. I mean, not in a bad way, but moved all this energy, you happened to be the recipient of it.
And I knew it wasn't at me, but she yelled so much that her microphone was all messed up afterwards where I could barely It was all muffled because she had she knocked it over, and she was like, it sounded like a bowl in a china shop over there. I don't know what's going on, but it was a good thing though. And I wish I had heard an update because I don't know what happened with her, but it had to have been a good thing. But the one that I'm talking about though proceeded to go on and get, how much did she get? $400,000
She got a significant amount.
It's like $400,000. She emailed me like a month later and said, yeah, I got $400,000 after our session. So, I mean, it worked. I triggered her and I said, I want you to feel resistance. If you're not feeling resistance, you're lying. Or you have the thing, but you don't have the thing, therefore there's resistance. So where's the resistance? Resistance, that's the very first thing I talk about when I get into a session. I had a session yesterday, and the very first thing, okay, what's going on? What are you feeling? Why aren't you having it? Before we can focus in the direction of where you want to go, we have to take care of why you're not there yet. What's blocking you? And we have to clear those obstacles before we can hope to make progress in the right direction. So life will test you. I don't like to say test. It will fight back because you've been going in a certain direction. So again, if you're used to feeling lack and then you start saying, I'm going to feel abundance, then it brings up all these fears. Negative things might happen, and that's okay.
It's like if you do your hair in the same position for years, and then you're like, I want to change it, but the comb won't your hair won't, even if you comb it, your hair won't let you go back, because it'll go back to the same position it was before, so you have to spray it.
That would be your analogy.
It works, doesn't it?
That is the Eleanor analogy.
It works though, because yes. I have a friend that was trying to do my hair, but wouldn't work unless she put all this goop in it, because it went back to the way I always did it.
Yep.
So it's like that.
Yes, thank you. So, I get it though. But, you have to, when this happens, it is so vital that this is the most important part of the process. If you give in here, I'm not meaning to sound all fatalistic, but if you give in here, you kind of take a few steps back. You lose your progress. So it's vitally important. Now, I'm not asking for perfection. There's always another chance. But if you just maintain that choice, this is what I choose to experience. I don't care what thoughts are happening. I don't care what experiences are out there. I choose to feel blank. Whatever it is. And this tends to happen. It's not so much for, I've talked about how I chose to feel valued at work and I'd get compliments. That was already within my level of expectation that I knew it could happen. So that kind of thing is not always going to fight you back. But when it's a big change, I used to call them next level goals. When you're going for a next level goal where you're trying to get something big, then you're going to have some feedback. You're going to have some resistance to the change. And so you have to maintain in the face of all resistance the thing that you have chosen to experience. And I learned this for the first time. It made so much sense, and I've seen it to be true in situation after situation. I took a course, one of the first courses I took back in 2015, it was Hypnosis and the Law of Attraction was the course. And do you remember?
Yes. Yeah. Now I do.
And
I didn't know which one you were talking about at first.
Yeah, and that guy taught me a lot of what I currently know. I mean, I've added to it a lot. I've modified things a bit.
It was your foundation.
But it was definitely my foundation because everything he said was absolutely true. I just added to it. But he said that when you make a decision, that your subconscious it wants internal consistency. So it'll say, well, okay, you said we should now feel abundant, but wait, what about you? You used to always say money has to be hard. So what about that? Money's hard. Isn't money hard? And it'll tell you how money's hard. And if you say, oh yeah, I forgot, money's hard. I can't do it. And then it's, okay, yeah, well, you're right. Okay, so forget all the other stuff you're trying to tell us about, and that's gone. Or, okay, if instead your subconscious says, yeah, money's hard. Remember that? And you say, yeah, I know I told you that before, but no, now we're focusing on money's easy and abundance is possible, and I feel abundant, and that's what we're going to feel now. And your subconscious says, oh, okay. All right, well, I guess that's not so important anymore then. The money is hard story. But wait, what about this other thing? What about, rich people are evil? Or, whatever. Like, people have, whatever beliefs people have about money, there are tons of them. Or what about you have to suffer to have a lot of money? Or what about it's selfish to want money? And every little thing that comes up, you have to say, yeah, I know I've told you that before, but now this is what is true. You obviously don't literally say that, but it's sort of the attitude. The thought comes up, and you say, yeah, okay, that's a thought. I recognize it, but I maintain my focus here on abundance. And so you accept the thought, you're mindful of it, and it goes, and you go deeper into what you choose to experience. That little tidbit right there was what has totally changed my manifestation experience. Knowing that, because it's true, and this is why I look for resistance, because if you are focusing on your goal, you're going to have resistance. It's your subconscious arguing with you or just saying, okay, well, what about all these other things you've told us in the past? So this is why with clients, I look for the resistance. And with clients, I tell them, I want you to focus on your goal every single day. Because some people say, I'll just focus on it once and it'll come. And it can be if you don't have much resistance, but it's not my experience. My experience is that you need to focus on it quite frequently. Because when you do, the subconscious will say, oh, here's that story again. He's been focusing on it a lot, so it must be true. But what about these other things? And it'll bring up the other things. And you have to maintain your focus in the face of resistance. That's probably one of the most important things that you could learn about, that you could do and implement for yourself. Because if you can do that, then, you're well on your way to having your goal. When you have that resistance come up, first of all, it's a sign that you're on your way, you're on the path. As I said, I would rather you have resistance than have nothing, right? So if you have resistance, you're moving in the right direction. But then when you can let that go and maintain your focus on your goal, on your chosen state, then you know that it's really within your reach. That's all it is. So just to summarize a little bit, I want you to be the prime mover of your reality. And that means not being the reactor, not being the responder, but being the actor, the first mover, the unmoved mover, the uncaused cause, being God, basically. Choosing what your experience will be. I'm going to feel happy. I'm going to have a good experience. I'm going to be positive. I'm going to experience these things. Not by suppressing the negative. We never suppress the negative because it's still there. So not by suppressing the negative, but by accepting, welcoming, embracing the negative so that it's free to go. And then with the new space, the new blank canvas that we now have, we shift our focus to the positive. So there's a difference between I am so positive, everything's great, and then everything's falling apart. That's not what you want. There's a difference between that and, sometimes negative stuff happens and I have negative thoughts and it's okay. But I choose to return to my chosen experience, that things are good and I'm happy and life is abundant and life is kind and, things are wonderful. And when you do that, life will agree with you. Sometimes it'll question you at first. Are you sure? Because that's not what you said in the past. But when you maintain that focus persistently, consistently, every single day, then life will begin to agree with you. And it will begin to bring you experiences that validate and confirm your new decision. And now that means that you have moved life. It has not moved you. You have to maintain, you have to not be moved by whatever life brings your way. You have to be the prime mover, and life will conform to your will. And that is the truest definition of magic that exists. So hopefully that makes sense. That's a lot. I mean, it's sort of everything that I've taught in a nutshell. If you listen to, especially episode 20 for kind of the method of disconnecting. I did talk about it here too, but moving beyond the veil. But this is sort of a good template for just what you need to do to create what you want, create the kind of life you want. It's not visualization or affirmations. I was, again, with my client yesterday, we went through so many misconceptions. He's like, well, I don't like affirmations that much. I'm like, good, me neither.
He was probably surprised.
Yeah. And, I don't do visualization. He's like, well, don't you have to have really clear detail of everything that, you're trying to get? And like, no, I don't. A lot of people aren't good at visualization. You don't need a clear image. So many people say you have every detail. See it and hear it and feel it and smell it and taste it. I'm like, that's a lot of work. I'm way too lazy for all that.
And what about blind people? That
yeah, exactly, right. So, no, you don't have to visualize it. You don't have to affirm it. All you have to do is choose the state that you want, and life will agree with you. And again, just one last thing is, I said this earlier, but I just want to emphasize it. Don't try to get things to feel how you want to feel. Feel how you want to feel, and then the things you want will come.
That is so hard.
It is hard. It's like, if I had that job, I know if I had more money, I know if I had that relationship, I would be happy. No, you wouldn't. I promise you, I swear to you, you would not be any happier than you are now. I promise you. I've done it. I've been there. I've, done all these different things, gotten a whole bunch of different things, not been any happier, even been less happy sometimes. It doesn't work. Be happy, and the happiness will be validated and confirmed by the happy experiences that life brings to you. But don't be happy or pretend to be happy to manipulate the universe into giving you experiences so you can be happy. It doesn't work. So again, if there's one thing I want you to get out of this, don't seek for experiences to give you the emotions you want. Feel or choose the emotions you want, and the experiences have to follow. That's just how it is. And most people are doing the law of attraction totally backwards, because they're saying, if I have this thing, I'll be happy, I'll feel good, I'll whatever. It doesn't work that way. You can't manifest to solve a problem. It has to be playful, it has to be fun, it has to be easy. That's how creators create. So hopefully that all makes sense. I would love to hear your thoughts about this. If you want to see the show notes for this episode or start a discussion, you can come over to darkascent.org/DA022. And if you'd like to go deeper into these topics, there is always the Circle of Darkness newsletter. And that will go into all sorts of different topics on magic, on the law of attraction, and spirituality, and many, many, many other topics. So if you want that, you can check it out at darkascent.org/circle. So I thank you for joining us. So I hope that you will return for our next episode, which is in 2 weeks. But until then, I hope that you have a wonderful time creating and implementing these principles. Thanks for listening. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Love is the law. Love under will.